This week on your Old School RuneScape Update, 2024 begins with a summary of our Christmas break featuring combat feats. We also discuss the powerful RuneLite menu entry swapper plugin, unexpected crystal singing, and the stark differences between the Throne of Miscellania and the Fremennik Isles. This is the Old School RuneScape Update, Episode 9, recorded Saturday, January 6th, 2024. The Leagues Crescendo. Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the Old School RuneScape Update, the first episode of 2024. Sirion and I are back after a week off. Isn't it good to be back? Discuss things, figure out where we've been.
It's been a super weird week, honestly. Because like Monday, New Year's Day, but then like a lot of things still haven't started up yet this week. So this was kind of like a normal week, but also kind of not. So
exactly.
This episode sort of snuck up on me, to be honest.
Right, and I was feeling like, we're back this week for Old School. And the reason we're back this week for Old School is because we have this thing called Leagues going on, but the RS3 show isn't starting for another week because there was no game update this past week. So when you sum up all those things together, well, we're of course going to discuss what we've been discussing since mid-November at this point in time, which is of course that wonderful adventure known as Leagues. Depending where we're at and where we want to go in the waning hours. But nonetheless, you can follow along. Show notes at update.show/OS. We have a friends chat in-game, which is BitsBytes, and the community Discord is at update.show/Discord. You can find me in-game at Shane12088, and Sirion is Sirion spelled with a C at the start. All right. So it's been a Christmas break. I know you and I know myself. We both spent tons of time on Leagues over the Christmas break, and are you feeling fulfilled here in the waning hours?
Yeah, I think so. I definitely achieved what I wanted to achieve. I even exceeded it in the end. So I think there's nothing to complain about, really.
That's good. I of course have a laundry list of things that I'd like to complain about, but we'll save that for another show as it's going to be. Just of course a bit of a preview into that. I came into this not knowing what to expect and what I wanted out of it. But I did get many things over the Christmas break that are, of course, maybe tangentially related to that. And, one of the first things I think I sat down to do after we broke for Christmas was I got my fire cape, which I was putting off. I should have done it way sooner. Way sooner.
It's you always entertain me with these things. We talked about this on like one of the previous shows, where you just put off certain things because you think they're awful, and then when you end up doing them, you're like, oh, that's not so bad.
It's the institutionalized memory of 2006 me trying to go for a fire cape many times and failing, I think, is what it was. But, the way it ultimately shook out, folks, is that for people who have done that on Leagues, is that, zero food on Jad, just like you predicted, but the rest of the fire caves needed a bit of food, and boy, are we thankful for Banker's Note on that. Very much so.
Yeah, it helps. I think I could have probably done it without, but it's nice to have that little bit of backup.
Yeah, just as even a comfort thing, right?
Exactly, and I think it comes. It speaks to the League's ability to give you those extra layers of comfort to just try out new things and get prepared for them.
Right, and that's the thing that I smiled the most walking away from, which will become clear as we progress through this show. The main reason I wanted the fire cape wasn't the combat stats. It was to get into the thieving area to get gems.
Right. Right.
with my ice gloves from wonderful Asgardia. which you didn't get in the end because you went for Tyrannin, Kandarin, and Korib.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
No ice gloves for you, but
No ice gloves. No.
yeah, but the fire cape was definitely useful in relation to other combat adventures along the way. How about you? Where do you want to go next in terms of leagues or what we've been up to over the break?
I mean, I'm practically finished with leagues. I mean, I don't have much of a choice, I guess. It's ending in a few days.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I spent a lot of time, especially today, just catching up. Just cashing in all the work that I've been doing over the past few weeks.
Basically, like what I assume you mean is leveling things up. You were leveling things up, and now you just go do the tasks that you unlocked.
Exactly. Now you can bang out a lot of tasks and just do them. So I did that. I reached Adamant rank today, which I am really pleased about. I know Dragon is the cool kids thing, but honestly, that was never going to happen in the first place.
No, not for us people who are still generally relatively new to old school RuneScape in the whole grand scheme of things.
Also, the time investment.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I have a full-time job and I have other hobbies as well, and my backlog of other games that I've wanted to play has been neglected as it is. I looked at my playtime on my Leagues character, and I'm coming up on 7 full days. I need to check what's my main character's game time is, but
you know what's interesting about that?
They're probably in the similar ballpark at this point.
You know what's really interesting about that? You mentioned 7 days on Leagues time. That's exactly about where I am too. So one of us has been more efficient than the other one. In terms of finding points and and doing things and doing running down the task list. And I know I didn't put this in the rundown for you. Actually, I just checked right now just out of curiosity since you mentioned it. Mainscape old school characters at 8 days 7 hours.
I could check right now. It's easy to look in, but yeah, no, it's for me. Like the loop you have, the fact that there's more instant gratification rather than delayed gratification makes leagues just a little bit more interesting to play. A lot of I'm on 10 days.
7 days 9 hours.
I'm on 10 days in Mainscape and leagues. I can get you the last number.
Yeah, and the reason I wanted to mention that is it's kind of something we've been dancing around about, whether or not we, bring up and talk about. Because you asked me a question over the Christmas break. Are you having more fun now that you stopped chasing points? And the answer to that was yes, wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I honestly don't get it. Like the point chase for me was definitely part of the fun that Leagues brought. And the reason for that is it's a game where you have to do a lot of things, but
it gives you a way. It kind of gives you a way of organizing it and doing it, right?
That, but also normally it's just a grind, right? Like if you think about it, yeah, there's quests and there's PvM, but a lot of it is pretty repetitive.
Especially that early to mid game stuff around, some of the skills I find.
Yeah, maybe, but also like once you get the quest cape and have that all done, right? Like now you need to start chasing 99s, and there's not really any new content you unlock at that stage. Yeah. So, and the nice thing about Leagues is that it does a really good job of always giving you something that you can probably achieve in 30 minutes. Like not everything is achievable in 30 minutes, but I'm at the point where if I wanted to do a task, I could usually do one in 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing.
Marked.
Especially when you look at the task list and you look at, say, the tasks that are worth, 10 to 40 points. Granted, we're running out of those as we approach the end here, but that is actually a very good point in terms of just making it so that you could achieve something relatively quickly. And we know that the core aspect of RuneScape is picking a goal and then, of course, doing that, but finding the most efficient way, or finding, 2 or 3 other things along that path when you're going for that goal. And that's why, on paper at least, it makes sense to me that having things like the achievements list and the League's task list is a wonderful thing. And it allows somebody, like you said, to come in for 30 minutes a day and just achieve something. And I think that's wonderful. I think that's wonderful from a design perspective.
It also makes me achieve things that they're sort of off the beaten track, right? Like some of the tasks I did were arguably, they were a little bit like grinds, but they were very weird grinds. Like one of them was like fletch 250 redwood logs into arrow shafts.
I mean, that's like 10 cycles.
I have stacks of arrow shafts now in my bank that I will never ever need, right? In the main game, this is not something I would really do, but it's still, and that's the nice thing about Leagues. It makes you target goals that are sort of not the meta, in a sense.
Right. Because and how many times would people go and do something like that if they had no choice to?
Yeah. Yeah. And sure, there's plenty of things that Leagues gives you points for that you do anyway along the way, but far from everything.
Right. And see,
so and now here you are, and you are saying sort of like, oh, I'm no longer chasing points, I'm just doing whatever I want to do. But you can do that in the main game. Like, you're going to be able to do that in the main game in the future. So I'd love to hear why you're sort of dismissing half of the Leagues mechanics.
And I knew this question was going to be on this show. And I had been thinking about it since you first asked me. And the best answer I have to it is that I just don't like being told what to do. And I knew that coming into Leagues, and I anticipated that might be an issue, but I still wanted the entire experience along the way of playing as an Iron Man, playing with a limited set of regions, playing with insane XP multipliers. And to me, it was more about the experience than it was the task chasing. And, I think
there's hundreds of tasks. Like, you have all the bloody choice in the world on what you're going to do, and at least somewhat adjacent to it, there will be points to be gained.
Sure. But at the same time,
nobody is telling you what to do.
Right, but I felt like I needed to do certain things to do things more efficiently. Like, I felt like Tier 7 was an absolute requirement to go for one of the combat relics before getting wholeheartedly into some PvM.
Right, yeah.
And that's my
that is you convincing yourself that you need it.
Right, and that's my min-max heart speaking.
Yeah.
And for people who are new to the show or might not be aware, I'm a min-maxer.
Yeah, I can't really empathize with that. Empathize, like it.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, like because like one of the things and one of the reasonings you gave for choosing Tyranmin is like, oh, I wanna explore the space, right? Like, I want to see what's there. I'm like, but you're taking away that sense of exploration to do that alongside your main character. Like that. I mean, I ended up picking Tyranmin because I think for me, how I play, it gave me the most sources of points.
Sure.
And I think I made the right choice in the end.
Yeah, and to be fair, I wouldn't have chosen Tyrannin if the lore was spoiled to me. I did gather the Memoriam crystals, but I didn't read any of them. I know nothing about, Song of the Elves and how that went and what the old school story is about that. I'm saving that side of it for Mainscape.
No, but yeah, like I find that exploring the mechanics and exploring the game world around it is it's equally exciting to me.
Yeah, that's fair.
And yeah. So yeah, like, I mean, very different. I guess we're very different people in that respect.
Yeah, and I you can kind of guess how I was going with this. Is that I'll be 100% honest. There's things I would do differently, and I asked you about this, and you said no, I wouldn't do anything differently, and that comes down, I think, again to that min-maxing sort of play style that I kind of wish I leaned into more, but I didn't know how much I was going to like it. I didn't know how much I was going to like the PvM, and so on and so forth down that path.
Yeah, I mean, just to clarify, I'm not doing anything differently. Like, if I were to play Leagues again now, I would make different choices for variety, of course. I might also not always have made the best choices in the moment. Like, I think there's a lot of tasks I could have done way earlier, which meant I would have gotten the relics earlier, etc., etc., etc. But I can look back on it, and given my knowledge, my game knowledge at the time,
they were the right choices to make. Like Trickster,
yeah,
for example.
Exactly. It's not like there might have been different decisions that would have put me in a different position and maybe better, but I didn't know them at the time. Like, I think with all the information I got, it's pretty optimal. At least I optimized for my own fun.
That's actually a very good point, because if you're not doing that, you're gonna hate the thing, and you're gonna want to stop. And maybe exactly. I didn't do that. Maybe that's what it comes down to. But to get back to the task list, I've had the same problem with task-driven things as long as I can remember. I am dreading the task diaries on the main game. On RS3, the achievement diaries there were some of my last comp requirements. And when it comes to achievement hunting in general, if you look at something like my Xbox profile or my Steam profile, they're going to be some of the lowest achievement scores out of my entire friend group.
I don't get it. You don't like the dings from like the achievement?
I don't know. Maybe we got to get Francine on again to explain that.
Yeah, I like the dopamine hits it gives you, and I think that is a super important factor to how I play games. Like we often talk about this. A friend of mine, we are always going back and forth, like playing games like Factorio or stuff like that, and writing code. And we're like, we spend, I mean, at this point, hundreds of hours on playing Factorio, for example, right? It is just problem solving. It's really just software engineering. Why are we not working on writing code and working on a game instead, right? But the outcome is sort of the instant payoff that you get out of building like a little factory, and it works and you can see it working. Yeah. And for me, achievements are a very similar thing. In a particular moment, you achieve something and the game says, well done. Here's a little badge for you to commemorate this trivial achievement. It, by all means, if I describe it like that, it shouldn't work, but our brain is like, yes, validation, give us more of that. And for me, Leagues has been that.
That's exactly that.
Yes.
Okay, that's a good way of describing it. And, I knew that was what happened for people, but putting it in that context, I think, helps a bit. And when you expand it out to that, if I even go back further than RuneScape and look at, games even going back to the N64 and GameCube era, it was never about anything, that would be in that same vein. of completing something. It would just be, about playing the game for a bit and then moving on from it. Granted, of course, different ages and whatnot and different types of game back then. But I think what we're just underscoring is that it's just a different thread between me and the way I play games, probably. And maybe this is also why I don't play single player games too.
Yeah.
So it could be all that. It could be all that.
So if you haven't been chasing points, what have you been doing with your time?
I've been doing a lot of PvM since Christmas.
Uh-huh.
Yup.
Uh-huh.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Can you call Volcano PvM?
You're a player. Sargana is a monster.
Okay. So, obviously, skilling boss, not going to be as... And I don't want to say this as a disservice to other skilling bosses out there, but I feel like the skilling bosses are less engaging PvM than the actual PvM, but they're still very interesting to play. And, granted, I think I probably only spent about an afternoon at each of them based on, the time I had over the break. So that's the context I'm speaking of for all these. But, I just really enjoyed the flow for Volcano. I love the fact that if you want to, it's an option for getting ores and bars if you wanted to grind it out that way after you get the necessary mining level. Of course, getting to Prif, you're going to, in the main game, you're going to have 70 smithing and mining, so it's not a problem. You can just walk straight in to Volcano for that. So I like the idea of what it provides. And I was actually a little bit worried about this going in. I was worried to, find out if, are there going to be people actually playing Volcano? And there actually were on the Tyrannan themed world. So that was actually very nice to see, because we all remember from the stats breakdown. I think about the halfway point, Jagex and the content creators put out that breakdown video of the stats and the number of people that chose the various regions. And quite honestly, Tyrannan wasn't very high on that list. So I had my concerns, but nonetheless, I walked away from this and I feel like the interaction model that you get at Volcano is more interactive than Wintertoke. I know you like Wintertoke because you're the pyromancer or the pyromaniac, but I found Volcano to be a more engaging, more fulfilling skilling boss. So with that and how much time you spent at Wintertoke, both in the main game and in Leagues, did you have a chance to take a run through Volcano? What did you think?
I didn't.
Okay, you didn't. Okay,
no.
Fair enough. And, fair enough. Maybe you save that for the main game, I think, and, mass it out on a full world where things are happening in that regard. But I just find, and, maybe there's more, it would have been interesting to see what this was like when Prif was launched. But I just find what they did for all of the combat encounters associated with Prif and, Tyrannan in general to be very interesting and very, what should I say? Very wholesome, very fulfilling, very honorable to the old school game design ethos, let's just say. And
yeah, I can see
and
that.
And it kind of in many ways shaped that experience. And it's like, this is old school. This is, when Song of the Elves and when Prif came out, this is what we viewed as the pinnacle of some combat encounters. And obviously Prif isn't the hugely overpowered city like it is in RS3. And I think we're both grateful for that, which has led us the ability to find things like Volcano, Zulrah, the Gauntlet, and Prif.
Well, yeah, and see, the way you describe this, I'm sort of sad that I never really got around to trying out some of the raids in Leagues. Because I think we didn't get are there. An even further evolution of BVM. But unfortunately, I haven't had the chance.
We looked at the requirements yesterday and we're like, well, I was like, no, that's not happening in the last 5 days.
Yeah, I mean, Leagues makes you very overpowered. I think it is very doable. I'm not quite sure if I want to put in the energy right now.
Because it would just be Chambers of Xeric for us.
Yeah,
or do you have one in Kandarin?
No. It's Desert, Mortania, and Current, and have the free raids right now.
Okay.
So yeah, no, like that is the one thing I would kind of have loved to take a look at. But it just didn't. That's not.
Yeah, because my understanding of Chambers of Xeric, which is the one we'd be doing, is that we need all 3 combat styles to be proficient. I can be proficient in ranged and melee, of course, to level 60, but I don't have much for magic gear otherwise. So.
Yeah, I have 80s across the board, so it's not like I would be completely helpless. And the Guardian is there as well, so I think I could do it. But it's.
Maybe you should.
Yeah, maybe I should, and maybe I might.
Because you could probably find a world where it's going. Read up on the things that you need to do to be successful, and with the stats you have,
I think I can. You can solo it if you want to.
Yeah, but this is just a question of how much time would you spend banging your head against the wall trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
So.
I think I'm getting more excited to go back to the main game and work on my character there and incorporate some of the things we've learned from Leagues than trying to do the raids, but it makes me wary of describing like the PvM in Tyrannuin as the pinnacle of PvM. Like, I think some of it is still...
Well, maybe not the pinnacle in PvM in terms of, the most advanced or the most difficult.
Well, not anymore,
but
right?
Definitely, but definitely what shows off, what old school is, I would say.
Yeah.
Because I felt that with the Gauntlet, which is another thing that you and I both did. Because you did some of that, I did some of that.
I did do the Gauntlet. Yeah, that was maybe the one piece of content I was the most excited for trying out in Tyrannuin, because it is very dungeoneering-like.
Yep. Which, of course, is the RuneScape 3 skill that many people call a minigame, except here it's actually a minigame.
Yeah, well, it's not a minigame either. It's interesting. A lot of people don't like dungeoneering, and I think a lot of people don't like it because it is ultimately better played in a group. And if you play it with randoms, you're not going to have a good time most of the time. So I think a lot of the hate for dungeoneering comes out of this. I think the formula itself is great and awesome. And if you play it with the right people, you can actually have a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, I had a period of time, like a few weeks or maybe months, where I was doing dungeoneering fairly regularly with a semi-fixed group, and I had a lot of fun with it. So yeah, Gauntlet.
It gives those same kind of vibes, though, doesn't it? Like,
it gives similar vibes, but I wouldn't equate it to dungeoneering because you lack the cooperation factor. Like, I really liked the fact that you can strategize in dungeoneering because it's a randomly generated dungeon. If you're smart about who goes where and where the keys are, and who is carrying which group gate stone,
and Gauntlet is a lot more limited, a lot more simple in terms of the objective.
Yes,
because it's just prep for the boss encounter at the end.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would like it. I would like a mix between the two, I think. I would like dungeoneering to be more like the Gauntlet, where the bosses were actually difficult enough that you would need to do some skilling in the dungeon rather than just find the boss, find the keys, and get there.
And just blap it, yeah.
And just blap it, exactly. And the Gauntlet could do with a little bit more strategizing, because once you have the strategy down, like,
it's just the boss.
Sure,
fight.
it's randomly generated, but it's the same each time, basically.
Yeah, and that brings up a very key point with the Gauntlet, is that you can in effect create your own route that you go through the dungeon and do a variation of that route each run, and you get to a point where you have an exact list of what you're looking for in order to prepare, build the armor and the weapons. Which I guess is how you get to Corrupted eventually. So, what did you think of the boss fight at the end of that?
it was challenging for me,
Yeah.
for sure. I took a few deaths there.
I found it
but
more challenging than Zulrah.
Yeah. When I did it the last time, I had tier 8 unlocked with the Guardian relic.
Oh, you got it. You told me about this earlier. You got to share this with the listeners about how that
Yeah,
went.
and all of a sudden that trivialized that encounter. I took almost no damage. I used one piece of food and I got through it. That almost makes me think I should just try the corrupted gauntlet now.
Yeah.
Though that might, yeah, I might try it just for fun and giggles, once or twice. But yeah, no, that was very interesting because I died very horribly. Mostly, not necessarily because I ran out of food, but mostly because I could not keep up
And manage the
with all the
movement,
different
right?
actions. Yeah, like there's the movement, there's trying to attack the boss again, there's switching weapons to attack it with the right
Switching
style,
prayers.
switching your own prayers, and that was a little bit too much for me to manage in a time, and I missed some of the UI goodness you get with RS3 with that. But I think with
Good. You
practice, I
said
could
it.
get
You
better.
said it. You said it. And here I was thinking I was the only one who wanted that.
I wish I could just set up like two different quick prayers, for example, right?
Yeah.
Like having
Yeah.
two quick prayers I could swap between.
And make them keybindable.
I don't even care about that, but like having to,
Yeah.
But that's it. I think the Gauntlet is a solid piece of content.
But
might play it in main game
yeah, absolutely.
eventually.
I look forward to going back to that in Volcano. We'll get to the other Tyrann and adjacent piece of content in a bit. Did you get any seeds from the Gauntlet?
No, I did just the one KO in the end. Mostly because it doesn't. I mean, I could get armor seats or weapon seats or whatever seats from there and actually get some leagues points, but it wasn't actually contributing to leagues. Corrupted Gauntlet would actually, ironically. So no.
But you
I
did something
however,
else with your seeds.
Yeah, I did get myself a crystal bow because you could just buy it, and then I cheesed the heck out of smithing and crafting because it's so easy to do pickpocketing with Trickster relic.
Yeah.
So I spent about 2 work days with my phone next to me, just continuously pickpocketing. Grabbing like 100 enhanced teleport seeds through that, and then just turning them all into crystal shards, and then using those crystal shards to just sting a bow, revert it, sting a bow, revert it. This was not good for my wrist, by the way. This was not good for my RSI does not like this, but I managed to basically get 99 smithing and 99 crafting in like 45 minutes, or if not like few less than that.
Yep.
It felt a little bit ridiculous, but 99 smithing unlocks a lot of task sets. 99 crafting is useful to have. Those were 2 skills I didn't expect to get 99 in, but 99 I got.
I wish I could have done that, but I was missing the smithing requirement in the end. I only got to 70 smithing, so I couldn't have got to, I think it was like 77 to start doing the thing with the crystal.
I started at like 75 and used some skilling boosts to get me the first few levels there. But those skilling boosts, I needed them once, and then the XP went so fast that I didn't need them after the first bite.
And you know what the fun part about this is that this method probably only works in leagues.
It does. Like, realistically,
because of the thieving and the XP rates.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the number of shards you need. Like, you need like 100. I need like 100 enhanced teleport seeds. And their drop rate is, I will tell you, is 1 in 1,000 from elves pickpocketing. Or killing guards and Prifdinus. So 1 in 1,000. You need 100 of them, which means on average you would need to do 100,000 successful pickpockets.
And when pickpocketing doesn't automatically repeat itself in the main game, you see what a tall order that would be.
Right. And if you're like, oh, but I can just buy the crystal teleport seeds in the GE, yes, you can. They're about 2 mil each. So
At that point, you're better off just buying the bars
now,
and doing it that way.
But now you need 16 times as many because you don't have the times 16 XP multiplier.
You're better off buying bars.
So at this point, you're better off buying bars, exactly. But hey, it was not the way I expected to train smithing, but the circumstances allowed for it. It was very much emergent behavior, we call this in games, where the game is not designed to allow for it, but it sort of happens.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of like shaking the box and breaking the boundaries of what's possible. And I'm wondering,
it's the same reason that Soul Wars is absolutely ridiculous in Leagues, because you get both the XP multiplier and the minigame points multiplier. So at tier 8, or even tier 7, because you don't get any improvement to those things after that, your multiplier is basically times 80.
And at that right, and at that point, we've already talked about before, Soul Wars is your best place you're going to get essence. It's the best place you're going to get coal. It's your best place you're going to get adamant bolts, amongst other things too, for that. Mm-hmm. So, I have this idea in my head, and I wonder when Leagues was being built. I'm going to assume, just because of the kind of game designers that are inside Jagex, I'm going to assume that they envisioned all of these things at some point, or at least somebody envisioned these things all being possibilities, like the smithing and crafting method you described.
And I honestly love that, right? To me, that actually makes Leagues interesting. Is it desirable that there are methods like this in the game? No. Does it really matter for a game mode that's around for 2 months? Absolutely not, because it makes you do different things.
And I think that's another key Leagues point that we walk away from with this. What was your end thieving XP on this, by the way?
High. I think over 100 mil.
Okay.
XP.
All right.
Yeah. My virtual level is 121.
That says all we need to know, which puts you definitely north of that 104 mil that you mentioned. And here I thought I was doing great with around 60 mil thieving XP.
Nope.
No. Yeah. Did you have a chance to head into the Poison Waste and take on Zulrah?
I did. Again, I don't think I really experienced that encounter the way it's intended because of my Guardian.
Right.
I was mostly I used the Zulrah plugin that shows you where to stand for like the different stages.
Okay, what'd you make of that?
I was struggling figuring it out, and actually the phases were switching much faster than I expected.
Because the plugin doesn't automatically update. You have to click what you see.
So you're clicking it, you're running there, and you're trying to parse it, and in the meantime trying to avoid the venom.
Like, I honestly found it easier to just have the patterns image up that's on the wiki and kind of just go from that as a glance on a
that maybe would have been better. Like I said, I didn't experience it the way it was intended to, because while I was trying to essentially running around screaming, my Guardian was doing good work and just taking it apart.
Right, because you have to watch for the poison clouds. The Guardian does not. And for me, Zulrah was my most satisfying PvM encounter in old school. Because I started off with not being able to get a kill, and through some consultation and through looking at, the patterns on the wiki page and just, trying things out, it got to a point where I was able to get very consistent kills at Zulrah. I didn't get the blowpipe. I didn't push down that path because that would have needed, I didn't have, of course, the desert to get, make my own darts. So I would have needed 92 mining to make amethyst darts. So I didn't really lean too much into the blowpipe grind. But Zulrah was definitely my most rewarding PvM encounter, just because it was something where I was actually able to learn it and do it. And of course, I did have Soul Stealer by that point, so I didn't have to worry about prayer. I still needed to worry about, of course, curing venom and, eating through it. So Soul Stealer didn't take me all the way, but it was definitely a fun thing to learn and something I see myself going back to whenever that's unlocked in the main game.
You have the benefit, likely, that you can go back there now, and you had, it will be harder than in Leagues.
Of course.
For sure.
I know I'm not going to do it with a rune crossbow in the main game.
No, exactly. But you had a pretty close experience to the real life, and all you need to do is get that little bit of extra gear and that little, the combat encounter might be slightly longer, but you've got most of the strategies and techniques.
Yeah, looking at the guide on the wiki, they recommend the Carl's crossbow.
Yeah.
So there you have it.
You can just buy that.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's definitely something that I want to go back to. And I also feel like it was my first foray into old school PvM, just and on RS3 I had my first foray into that, and it's something I'll always remember and, smile back on fondly. But I want to touch on one thing in particular. You mentioned the Zulrah plugin. I wanted to talk about another plugin that we both discovered late in our Leagues adventure that really changed the game for us, and that's the ability, and I just wrote this as the plugin in the notes because of how powerful it is, the ability to rebind left-click and right-click menu items. I didn't know this was a thing until late in December, but oh my god, knowing this now, I'm going to be using this all over the place in the main game. I used it all over the place in Leagues, and it's obviously a feature of RuneLite, and when I saw this available in the plugin hub, I was like, how is something like that available and legal? But it is.
Yeah, the menu entry swapper plugin, I think it's called. I discovered it today, actually, because I was doing some selling of runes, and I found out that if you do it in batches of 50, you really shouldn't do it in batches of 50. So I looked into it because my wrist is still killing me from 99 Pacific and 99 crafting.
Oh my god, it is? You were serious about that?
Yeah, I was not gonna wreck my wrist even further with selling death runes to some Tsar person. So that's why I looked into this, and yeah, there you go. Shift click, sell 10. Hold shift and spam your left mouse button. And it's great. I knew it existed. I was always like, oh, that's probably pretty niche. I get most of the things I want to, but
oh, no.
Now that I found out that it makes bankers left-click bank, which they really should be, let's be honest, I'm like, how could I have played without this for a year? Right?
Yeah. And that really, what it did for me is it painted a picture of what the old school game experience is like for people who are just starting out with the game versus people who have been playing it for quite some time and have their RuneLite configured to a T of exactly how they want it. And you can bet that this plugin is in the list of many people's enabled lists for this. And as a result of that, it really, to me, showed that disparity between start and finish. And, it just really made me think that if this is something that the community decided that they needed, Jagex has decided to allow such a thing on this, then that, again, just like we were talking about with things like the Gauntlet, I think is another showcase of what old school is. And that's kind of the thing I wanted to walk away from that, at least from my perspective. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I still trying to make up my mind where the responsibility should really lie in the quality of life.
Right. As in, should the third-party plugin people in RuneLite provide that quality of life, or is it something that Jagex should ship for everybody?
Yes. Yes.
And I feel like with some of the updates on the horizon, we're going to be talking about that this year.
Yeah, as it stands, though, I'm glad it exists, and that is maybe the only thing that really matters.
Yeah, that's fair. Because you can choose to not use it if you don't want to use it, and I don't think people should be shamed for using something that has got the official stamp by Jagex as being okay in the plugin hub. So,
yeah.
In any case, I feel like we've exhausted our list of leaguesy things here to talk about, unless there's any other leagues-ish things that we want to talk about in terms of where we've been, what our regions have been over Christmas and the New Year break.
No.
We have a tale.
No, I've been all over the place.
Yeah.
with leagues, so it's hard to summarize it.
Yeah,
such a task list, right?
Right, and maybe we'll be able to come back to that next week in some kind of retrospective. We're not 100% on that yet. That's kind of the way we're leaning. If anybody in the audience has a strong opinion one way or another about what a retrospective should look like, let us know in the comments. A Tale of Two Quests. I think it's time to talk about that, what we did over Christmas.
Oh, the Tale of Two Quests. Yes.
So, folks will remember that before Christmas we talked about our adventure through the Fremennik Trials, and how me, again, was in the case of saying that this quest wasn't as bad as I remembered it, and, relatively easy overall, and not too fetchy until, one of the guys there. But, of course, one must ask, what happens after the Fremennik Trials? Well, you have the Throne of Miscellania and the Fremennik Isles. Which one do you want to start with?
Well, there's more, honestly.
Well, there's more, but these are the two that we've done so far.
Yes. Let's start with the Miscellania one.
Yeah. So, of course, Throne of Miscellania, everybody remembers that for the kingdom. And you would think because of that, you got this great quest behind it. This quest came out in 2004. And we need to be 100% honest here. This quest shows its age.
Huh. Mm-hmm.
It is the classic case of a fetch quest running back and forth between Miscellania and etc.
Yeah.
Just to talk to people.
Yeah.
And that's all there is to it. You unlock, of course, the Managing Miscellania activity. But this quest, I have to say it, is just far too fetchy for 2024. And granted, I don't expect anything to happen with this or anything to change with that. But what we thought of as a good quest way back in the day, I have to say at this point, is not a good quest. Unless you...
No, and there's a little anecdote. There's a little anecdote here as well that Clan Quest, the clan we're part of, they did like a big, tier list, quest tier list event, and they rated Miscellania as like I think B tier, and yeah, rewards wise it's really good, I guess, but. Yeah, I did not have a good time. And then we spent like half an hour chopping maples as well, right?
And that was, of course, I had a mithril hatchet at the time and I upgraded to rune, and that helped it a bit, but that was still slow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The quest is about the unlock, and that's what I told myself after I hit the logout button that day.
Yeah.
I might not have liked what I just did, but it was all about the unlock and the stuff I'm going to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is apparently right now only 46,000 GP per instance based on the Managing Miscellania Money Making Guide.
Yeah.
So it's not that strong.
Yeah.
When in reality with that, you could probably make more in a single herb run. So,
Yeah.
That's one side of it. But on the other side, we have the Fremennik Isles. I almost died again in a combat encounter.
What else is new?
Yeah, you say that. You say that.
Mm-hmm.
But this, I have to say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, this was the quintessential feeling of a RuneScape quest, I have to say, for this one.
We both agreed on this quite a lot, that this quest was way better. I enjoyed it. But I got to thinking, why is it different from Throne of Miscellania? Because there's 2 islands with 2 royalty that can't stand each other, and you're there running back and forth making peace. It is virtually the same quest. Virtually. Why do we dislike Throne of Miscellania, and why do we like Fremennik Isles? What does Fremennik Isles do better or different that actually makes it fun to do?
Well, there's less miscellaneous just talking to people. This is actually doing things, grabbing things, capped off by a combat encounter. There's this. The only part that really annoyed me about Fremennik Isles was the jester bit at the end.
I don't know. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's just the fact that you're actually doing things. So it wasn't just running back and forth. There was actually time between the running that made you do things. But I was surprised because
also 2007 versus 2004.
That's not even a massive difference. Though apparently, in terms of quest quality, it was. I mean, earlier we did the Giant Dwarf, and that's 2005.
Which I don't think that one was that bad.
No. I sort of enjoyed it. It was definitely a pretty decent one.
Yeah, and, Celtigrim, always wonderful.
Yeah, no. Came out in the same year as Land of the Goblins as well. That one we have yet to do, of course. It's sort of shocking to me.
And I feel like this was just a hallmark of early RuneScape. Maybe that's what it comes down to, is that individual products, individual pieces of content, individual quests were built and, in effect, pitched by a content developer to a person in charge, and they got the okay to go ahead with it. And that's how you wind up with this kind of disjointed feeling.
I guess.
Like, you unlock Relica, and then that comes with, an entire region of islands in the north, and you can tell a story about each of them. You have Miscellania. You have It's not. You have Lunar Isle, and each one of these has a very different story associated around them. And I think that was the whole point of what Relica and the Fremennik Islands were all about, was to provide, just a new canvas to tell stories in a different way that could all be different from one another. But, still, it doesn't explain how one is a more horrid fetch quest than the other one. And dare I say this, and I might be feeling bad about this in a few weeks. Do you know what I'm going to say right now?
No.
We're going to like One Small Favor better than we like managing or Throne of Miscellania.
I mean, honestly, I think One Small Favor gets too much flack. I understand it's annoying, but I think it is the hallmark of British humor and the hallmark of what quests and RS should be. So, for that reason, I One Small Favor is never going to be my least favorite quest. It's not going to be my favorite one, but if they make a One Small Favor 2 that has all the learnings and actually is takes away all the annoying parts of the quest,
sure,
I think I'm gonna love the heck out of it.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way looking at that. And I think we should also bring this one up higher on our list of things to do. We should sit down and evaluate where we're at on these quests, because I already mentioned to you earlier there's one that I want to bring up on that list, but that's a topic for after the show, of course. And I think just this perspective on quests, 10 plus years after the fact, looking at them is an interesting thing to peer into, and maybe somebody else can, who's on this path, see that and understand where we're coming from, or maybe not. Maybe we're just experiencing something unique here. But that's been our questing. Is there anything else you think we should talk about before we go?
No.
It's just good to be back for the new year, isn't it?
Yeah, and I also have to say it, Leagues has reinvigorated my love for RuneScape. It has taught me to look at it in a very different way. So I am excited for what the coming year brings.
That's good, because we weren't sure if it was going to do that for you in particular, or if I was going to like it. And, despite how I might have complained along the way, I think I did enjoy it. So there's that. And we're closing the chapter on Leagues. I think there's still time maybe for a retrospective. We haven't 100% decided on that, and that would be on next week's show. Of course, we'll see what Jagex has on tap for us in the coming week. But I feel like it was a very fun and enjoyable Christmas break. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'm sad that it's gonna go away, Leagues. I'm also glad for it, because I think the fact that it's time limited makes it better. I'm gonna miss my Goofy Leagues character though. I've grown attached to the guy.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Yeah. But that's the nice thing about Leagues as well. RuneScape, it never ends. There's never a moment where it makes sense to stop. And Leagues has an end, and that fundamentally makes it better as a game, in my opinion.
Oh, that's interesting. And of course, people might wonder what all that's about, and maybe you're saying RuneScape should end, but I don't think you're saying that, right?
No, I'm not saying that, no.
Okie dokie. Well, of course, we'll be back next week for more discussions, questing, Leagues, and whatever happens this week in old school RuneScape. Of course, if you enjoyed this episode, do be sure to like and subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what buttons to push. If you're on the audio feed, visit update.show/OS, and of course, just click and subscribe on your favorite podcast listener of choice. But with that being said, we'll be back next week for another episode of the Old School RuneScape Update. See you then, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.